and welcome to the final presentation for 2024's Lancaster History Month. My name is Rachel. I'm the Assistant Director here at Thayer Memorial Library. A building in North Lancaster stands alone, slowly deteriorating, but few people notice. In its day, this building was very important to a special group of people. The work of these people affects us every day. Many of us did not realize that Lancaster has connections to the Shakers, their lives, and their inventions, which we use every day. Leading us this evening in discovery is Amy Brown. She has been working as an interpreter at the Fruitlands Museums in Harvard for 6 years. There, she researches and shares local history and topics associated with those museums. Amy has also been deeply involved in Lancaster's historical organizations. She lives here in town with her husband and their cats, Smitty and Wes. She is an enthusiast not only of our local history, but also of mushroom foraging, knitting, and embroidery. Amy Brown.
Does everyone in the room, or is there anyone in the room who has not heard of the Shakers? I'm trying to find out where to start. Okay, so the Shakers actually started in England, and it was a woman, Mother Ann Lee, who started the Shakers. She attended a Shaking Quaker church, and when they moved over here, they became known as the Shakers. She didn't survive very long over here. She lasted about 10 years because a lot of people were very suspicious of the religion. And so there was a lot of persecution, and she was usually the target. You know, I just want to get you out of town. Just don't bother my people, and you'll be fine. So that happened quite a lot. There were quite a few people in Lancaster who were interested in the religion. They didn't necessarily meet her, but there was a village in Shirley, and they became interested. Those people lived in the part of Lancaster that most people don't go to these days. It's the south post of Devons and the Susa Bernowski prison. So I'm going to take you on a little tour of that so that you can see some of the buildings and sites that are still there. Most of the buildings are gone. So what happened, I should also say that the people who joined, they stayed in their homes for a while and then eventually moved into the village. When they moved in, there was a whole group of people that filled their homes, and those people were from Reading. So that meant that there was no loss of population, really, for the churches in Lancaster. So this is the building that Rachel was talking about when she read about me. This was a Shaker office. So if you were going to visit the Shakers, because they were a closed community, you'd have to check in, and this is where you would do that. The Shakers made everything that they needed themselves in the beginning, and gradually, as they could afford other things, they would buy. But they made things, they made them in excess, and they sold the excess, and that was their way of earning a little bit of money for the things that they needed to buy. They're also very well known for making a number of other things and inventing a lot of things. And when you went to this building, you could purchase medicinal herbs, say, or even a piece of furniture in a building like this. Now this building, it's only 2 rooms. And I want to point out too, no bathroom, no kitchen, because they lived communally. So when they ate their meals, they went to a different building. And eventually they did have bathrooms. They were interested in leading edge technology. Whenever anything new came up, they wanted to be the first ones to have it. And they taught their children. When I say their children, these would be orphans or from poor families, children from poor families, that they would bring into the village, and they would teach them leading edge math and science, analysis skills. And that's why you had so many inventions come out of the community. So I've already talked about these things. The other was, so I took this picture last week. It got a new roof in 2005, thanks to Lancaster and Shirley working together to make that happen. But the reason why it's being torn down now is there's so much red tape. If you wanted to move this building to another location, it wouldn't be worth it to do it. So if any of you are interested, certainly contact the prison. I can give you a contact number. Yeah, okay, and so you understand, so this is the, well, you can use a printer, a pointer, right? So there's the Devon South Post. Up here we have, this is the line, that top solid line. That's the line between Lancaster and Shirley. So the people came from around here, and that was called Ponacan Hill back in the day. But when the Whittemore sisters moved there, they changed the name to Whittemore, and that could have happened with other families as well. So I don't really know what it's called now, and as you can see, there isn't a name that shows up on the map. So I looked at several maps for that. There was also, right here, there was the Wilds Farm, and they donated their whole farm to the Shakers, and the part of the farm that was right on the line became the Church family. They separated their villages into families. So the Church family was right on the line there and just above it. And then there was the North family, which would have been up further up here. There were a few families from over in this area, but most of them came from this area here. And it's a part of it, Lancaster, that we honestly don't think about that much because none of us can go there. I'm surprised that this is working now. So this line here, I need to use this line here, that's the Lancaster line. This blue dot down here, that's the building we were looking at. We've got Sousa Baranowski Prison here. MCI Shirley Prison is here. This area here, that was the Church family. And then up here was the other brother who started the North family. So the three families worked together. And the way Shakers, the way you join the Shaker religion is you would join a family of people who were testing it out, seeing if it was what they wanted. And that would have been the South family. So this family down here. And then when you decided you wanted to commit, but you weren't ready to donate all your assets to them, you would move up to the next one. And the Church family was the highest level of belonging. So they were the ones that were running the show, so to speak. So what we're going to do now is we're going to visit the different sites. This here is the Holy Hill, and it's where they would go and worship. In the beginning, while Mother Ann was alive, those first 10 years, they worshiped outside. But after she died, they moved inside and didn't worship there as often. The reason being that they thought maybe they were making so much noise that it was reminding people that they were there, and they thought maybe it would ease the persecution if they inside. So to give you an idea, there's a quote in one of the journals of somebody 7 miles away that could hear them singing and dancing. And and it's actually from here over to the farm that was over here would have been about 7 miles. Yeah. They loved to sing and dance. They're singing and dancing. They did it until they were in a frenzy. If you know the song, "'Tis a Gift to Be Simple," one of the verses, they talk about spinning, spinning. They would spin so fast that they would become a blur. And there were certain, particularly young girls, that were quite good at doing this. And this is something that Mother Ann became recognized as the second coming of Christ, and part of it was because she would go into a frenzy, a fit, whatever you want to call it, and when she came out of it, she would share a message from God. And this kept happening to her over and over. It started in England, and her followers started doing it as well. And as they had more population join them, there were certain people that were so committed that it would happen to them as well. So let me see, I haven't covered. So these, we see where it says LANF, that red dot just above it is the Shirley Shaker Cemetery. And I'll tell you about that when we get to the picture. You need a visual for that. These 4 buildings here include an ice house, which is still there, a couple of dwelling houses, and some workshops. And so let's move on. Those are the ones that are left. Let me see if this works again. Yes. So now this is a bigger picture of it to give you more of an idea of where they all are. Once again, this is the Shaker office down here, Holy Hill. And up here we have the cemetery and the dwelling houses and workshops. So, any questions? Yes?
What years are we talking about here?
So the 1790s was when the village was actually started. But these people were already what they called gathered before that, because Mother Ann came to visit them in 1783 and stayed in the homes with them and went to meetings with them and shared and all. Yeah.
Amy?
Yep.
The siblings live together? Male and female? Or
No, dormitories, and males in one, females in the other. They believed quite strongly that it's like a monastery, okay? So you have a calling, and their calling was to help people that needed help. So taking in orphans, taking in families, and at this point in time, a woman couldn't get a job if she, if her husband died, for instance. And so Mother Ann came over in 1774, so we had the American Revolution, we had the War of 1812, the cholera epidemic of the 1830s. It was, there was something every couple of decades, basically. Yeah. Okay. So let's see what's on the next slide. Let's see. I think I did. Let me see. This is the most important slide to me. This is you can see in the cemetery the stones. Okay, keep that in mind. And up here, this is all I have of Holy Hill, because you can't get a picture of it now. There's too many trees. We actually climbed to the top of the hill. But if you look carefully, do you see the trees make a circle at the top? And it's hard to see. I think there was something in the middle, and we're going to see that in a minute in another picture. When it got to be 1840s into the 1850s, the leading village, which was New Lebanon, it was out by Albany in New York, they wanted to encourage the villages to interact more. And one of the things that they did as part of that plan was to go around and put a stone, a monument, on top of each holy hill and say, you've got to go up to the hill at least twice a year. So by having a ritual that they all did, this would give them all something in common. If you're interested in what it said on the stone, I did bring copies of that with me. It's kind of long to read. But so this is what we're looking at, and like I said, that's really the best picture I have of the Holy Hill. And you can see it's flat on the top, and they would get up there and sing and dance, and they had their own music. And sometimes they would read things that had been written by some of the leading people in the religion.
Instruments at all?
No, they didn't.
It was just their own voices?
Yes, yes. And Mother Ann's voice, people claim that she sounded like an angel. She would come in singing and you'd immediately feel relaxed. Okay, now we can go to the next one, if I can hit the right button. Okay, so this is the cemetery just last week. Just one monument, and all the stones are gone. The reason is that they didn't believe in individual recognition. So at some point they made that decision and they switched to this.
So none of those bodies were exhumed, they just...
No, they're still there. Yeah, and someone has gone in and mapped them out. And there was an interim, so they thought it was too extravagant to have like marble stones, so they stuck with slate, and there was a slate quarry nearby, so that made it convenient. But in Harvard, if you go to the Harvard Shaker Cemetery, you'll see wrought iron for markers and the names of the people. And that's the only cemetery in the world that has that. And the other Shaker cemeteries that switched to that took them all out and did this. Yeah, it was the people that lived in the village. I'm not sure. There is someone in the audience that might know. Ruth, do you know did they bury the men on one side, the women on? No, you mean sect. Yes. Yeah, but it's important because the other cemeteries don't separate out male and female anyway. Yeah. So let's try this again. Okay, this is a monument up a little closer, and you see the posts and the chains. There was that sort of thing around the monument on top of Holy Hill as well. Unfortunately, it's not there because there's a water tower there, which I'll show you in a minute. This is what it says on the plaque, erected by the United Society of Shakers to honor the memory of the members interred in this lot. 1792 to 1725. Yeah. Yes. Yes. There are two. There were two members of the religion left. The woman is in her 90s, the man is in his 80s. You would have to, if you wanted to join the religion, you would have to go to Maine to Sabbath Day Lake. And the problem with that is if you go, you don't have any peers. It's much better to join in a group. And what I noticed too was if you go back to how the villages got started themselves, the Harvard village was started because there was a religion there and the leader of the religion died. So Mother Ann was able to bring them all into the fold. And a similar thing happened in New Lebanon as well. That was the leading village of the religion. Yeah?
Could you explain to me what their religion was?
Can I hold that until the end?
Okay.
Because I want to make sure that I have time to get through the slides, and then I'll go into the religion in detail. we're kind of looking at sites. So this is an aerial view. There's the, let me get this. There it is. There's the water tower.
Is it on the site of where that?
It's right smack where that monument was, yeah, and all overgrown. We went up. Now, as they would walk up, when they got to about here, there was a bridge over a little stream. And they would all stop and form a circle and discuss any kind of a disagreement or bad feeling any of them had about anybody else. And all of those had to be resolved before you could go up the hill. So then they would go up the hill, they would have their ceremony, and they'd come back down and have a feast. Yeah, and the line actually goes like this. The Boys Reform School is actually in Lancaster, but Shirley's taking good care of it, as opposed to this poor, this is the, that was the Shaker office, and it looks just like the one at Fruitland. You weren't here for that part. So this is Susan Baranowski here. This is the MCI Shirley there. These buildings here have replaced the dwelling houses and workshops. And this right here, that is the ice house. Let me see if that's coming up. What we add is, there it is. So they had an ice house, and behind it they had a cute little pond covered with lily pads now. And they would store things that needed to stay cool with their ice, and they probably sold ice as well. Because like I said, they did everything in excess so they could have commerce with the world. So this is, I skipped again. I've got to learn how to use this. These are two dwelling houses, and as it says here, looking west, so if you're standing on that road looking west, this is what you would see. And the next one is includes the barn in the same two houses. We don't have a lot of pictures of what they looked like back then.
So nothing's
The ice house is there. The building that's going to be torn down is there. Yep. And that's about it. And see, this is autumn 1871, so that's an old one. So, anticipating questions. So what did they make? The Shakers invented the broom that we all use today. So think about that every time you sweep the floor, if you do. What happened was a man saw the women sweeping with their round brooms, like the ones they make at Sturbridge Village. Witches' brooms is the best way to remember them. Yes?
Do they own the broom business over on 110 in Bolton or Lancaster?
I don't.
On the corner
Did they
of-
have? I don't know.
There's a broom factory
Is there?
left
Huh.
on the way to Harvard.
I don't know.
downtown.
That could have developed from it. It was quite a big business, though. I don't know about Shirley so much as about Harvard, and Harvard would get orders for 100 dozen brooms at a time, and that would be from the mills and the factories in Worcester. Yeah, so brooms were a big deal. They made mops as well. Herbs was a very big business. Harvard, in their peak year, sold 18 tons of dried herbs. It's quite a lot of herbs. And they sold them in Europe as well as here. It wasn't as big a business in Shirley. It was actually a bigger business for some of the other Shaker villages, though. Yes?
You hear about Shaker furniture. Did they make
the furniture too, or?
They all made furniture, but the one that made the most was in New Lebanon, outside of Albany. They had a bigger catalog and made 7 different sizes of chairs. Yeah. Yeah. Apples were a big deal in Shirley. Shirley's biggest selling product was applesauce. They had a secret way of doing it. I'll share the secret with you because they're not around anymore. The first batch of apples they brought in, they would cook down and then dry. So they'd be very concentrated. And then subsequent batches that they brought back, they would make the applesauce and add in this more concentrated apple to give it a stronger flavor. I haven't tried it at home, but it's worth doing. Seeds. The Shirley Shakers invented seed packets. Prior to that, apparently, they'd give you a handful of seeds and they might fold it into an envelope for you to take home, but they came up with the seed packets we use today. Very same. Fancy goods. So the women came up with all kinds of ideas for fancy goods that they could sell to the world. And maybe they didn't use the fancy goods, but the world did. And they made baskets and boxes and things out of fabric as well, ribbons, all that sort of thing. So you would see that. And they also, they made food. They did canning and that sort of thing. So let me see what's next here. This is the question I thought everybody would want to know. These are the names of the people that lived, the Lancaster people that joined the Shaker religion. Some didn't stay in it forever, but they did join. Aaron Lyon is an example of. Lyons Farm was the big farm on the south coast of south post of Devon's. I always need my audience to help me out. Okay, so and an interesting thing about his farm is that there was an archaeology project done there. So I'm dying to find out, but I haven't found it yet. These names were taken from the history of the town of Lancaster by Henry Norse, which is full text, searchable online at the Thayer Memorial Library website. And it tells about the homes and who they were sold to when they moved out of them, which sounds like it would be really helpful, but I searched all the deeds and got nowhere. If anyone is particularly interested in that, we also have Joy Peach worked for the Historical Commission, and she researched all the people and that became Shakers. So in 1781, Mother Ann left New Lebanon and came out to visit her friends, the people that joined her religion, and hoping to recruit more to join it. And she had another idea too. She had heard that there was someone who was leading a religion who died. He thought he was the second coming of Christ. He told his people, don't bury me, because I'm going to come back after I die. So they left him in the living room for a while. Then they moved him down in the basement for a while. Then they dragged him out in a field and said, we're done. We're done with this. They didn't bury him, but he was persecuted as well as she was. He had a house built specifically for someone who was persecuted. It has secret passages in it, and it's designed for that. She wanted that house. Kind of interesting. So when she came out and went around, she was actually visiting people who were either members of that religion or knew about it. And she visited a number of different towns, and when she got to Harvard, she had had a vision when she was in England, and the landscape in Harvard matched that vision. She knew she was doing the right thing. And she did end up talking all those people into joining her religion, and that became the house she stayed in when she was in Harvard, and it's called the Square House. But you can see she, as it says here, she was persecuted both in Harvard and in Shirley. I've listed on the slide what happened to her in Shirley. There were several times that the houses were mobbed and she had to either hide or escape. She traveled for 2 years, and when she got back to her home, she didn't even last a year from all the injuries she got from the persecution. So she died at the age of 48. Moving ahead, 1870, the Shirley Shakers bought this house. Does it look familiar to anyone? This is the Brick Tavern. Yeah, this has a whole story of its own. But they bought it, and they added this section on the top. It's called a hip roof. I don't know how you define hip roof, but it actually added another floor. They used it for when people from the world came to visit, they could stay here instead of staying in the Shakers Village. They also moved a building. There it is. That's the Shirley Shaker Infirmary, which was, they built a bigger one, so it was no longer in use, and they had a caretaker live there to take care of the tavern and keep the people happy and all. The infirmary has an interesting story all its own. So this was across the street to the east from the Brick Tavern, and right now there's overgrown stuff there. A developer came in a few years ago, not too long ago, and put a housing development there. And that was going to be the open space for that neighborhood that he was building. And it's just overgrown now, kind of a shame. But I'm going to show you what happened to the building. I think that's the next slide. There it is. So a man, his name is Robert Adam. He moved that house, completely refurbished it, as you can see. And if you go to visit him, you go in your front door, and it's a museum. You go out the back door, and you go right into a contemporary house.
That's his house, into his house.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and he spent a couple hours with us showing us everything. And you can see it has an upstairs as well as a downstairs.
Where is it?
It's in the center of Shirley. Yeah. These are a special type of dormer gable. They're not your normal ones. They're sort of, it's because the roof is angled differently that they're different, but it is kind of.
Called shed dormers.
Yes, thank you.
I know.
I believe you. He did say that. I have a lousy memory. So there are other Shaker connections. Lots of business relationships. So this was a hopping place in the 19th century. Many of us today forget all the businesses there were, but the Shakers came down here to buy all kinds of things and to sell all kinds of things. And that was, good for Lancaster, good for the Shakers. The industrial school for girls, when they had girls that were not ready for the public yet, but possibly ready for a little bit looser structure, the girls would go up to the Shirley and Harvard Shaker villages and try to fit in. Didn't work out all that well. Didn't work out all that well. And then there is, here we've got the Shakers were hired to move slate quarry after the American Revolution. So when they were burying all the soldiers in Boston, it was the Shakers moving the stone in. And they did it so much that it became called the Shaker Quarry, but they didn't own it. So how did this affect Lancaster? Let me just say, a lot of the towns around here complained a lot about losing churchgoers to the Shakers. And you may not think it would matter. We all get to choose what church we go to now. But back then, it came through taxes, the money that went to the church. And in some cases, the minister would not, if he had to give, there was a while where he had to give permission. And in some cases, they wouldn't give it because they didn't want to have less people in the church. However, in Lancaster, the minister, he thought it was just fine. Some people like to go. I will say he was older, not really up for a fight. This was Timothy Harrington. And he went around to the other towns and helped them understand that new religions are going to come, and you can't really get angry about it. You need to go along with it. So the Seventh-day Adventists are a spin-off from the Millerites. The Millerites thought the world was going to end in 1844. So the Seventh-day Adventists would have started shortly after that. They were the people that said, nah, that doesn't make sense. And it started then. So yeah, it would have paralleled. The Shakers, they had their most population around 1850, and that was 6,000 members.
Not here.
No, there were. I hear estimates of different numbers of villages. There were at least 24 villages, and they ran from Maine down to Florida, west to Ohio and Kentucky. The western villages were a little bit different than the eastern ones. But as it turned out, the Shakers settled down. They started worshiping inside. And they started having a lot of commerce with the town. And so it actually became okay, and people started being friendly with them. They were a good source of quality goods, and a good support for the industry in the town. They had their own schools, but they were on a good enough par with the town that when the town gave tax money for schools, they gave it to the Shakers as well. Yeah. So I think, yes. So now we're at the end. I made a list because some people want to know about good books to read. Oh Sisters, Ain't You Happy and The Shaker Holy Land are Shaker books that focus only on Harvard and Shirley. And The Word is a biography of Ann Lee. I mentioned before History of the Town of Lancaster, incredible book. Some of it, Norse's notes are handwritten in it. Marvin wrote the initial copy and Norse filled it in. Shirley Uplands and Intervales has a little bit about the Shakers. And then I list, I spent a lot of time with the Shirley Historical Society and Commission. I did a lot of research in the Lancaster Historical Commission. Macris is where I got those funny looking maps with the red dots all over them. And the Historical Dictionary of the Shakers as well. I have a few more. I don't even know what time it is.
7:15.
Okay. No, I was noticing that. It's not moving very fast. I do have a few more slides. This is a closer up picture of the water tower from above. So this is a shed for equipment or whatever, and there's the water tower. And this is all, filled in all around there. We looked around quite a lot. Well, when you sell land, you don't necessarily have control over it. And when the Shirley Village closed, which was, they started the closure in 1905, and by 1908, they had moved out completely. The state bought 500 acres of their 1,000 acres of land. And the first thing they did was to build a reform school for boys. And you can see this set up if you go to Harvard on Prospect Hill Road. There's a lookout, and you look across, you see a green lawn. And you can see the boys' reform school at the far end, and then there's a green meadow in front of it.
At the top of the hill that you can, I know
Yeah,
where-
when you look off.
when you look off. And
Yeah.
Fruitlands is further down, but it's.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's actually part of Fruitland.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Is it still that? Is it still a boys' reform school?
I don't think it's used for that now. They were using it for minimum security prisoners, but they're not using it right now because they only have maximum now, so you never see anybody walking around outside. Yeah. Everybody asks about Shaker inventions. These are the ones I could find that had either a date or a name attached to them. They had their own musical notation, and it was invented in Shirley. Instead of having 5 lines, there was just one. And in medieval times, that's the way they wrote out music as well. And I don't know how close it parallels it. Too complicated for me. So here we have the flat broom invented by Theodore Bates. They had an oven that would cook 60 pies at once. It was shaped like this, and they would rotate around as they were cooking, so they would cook evenly. And the Quakers believed that men and women were equal, but they carried their, they had 3 levels of friendship, and this was a key thing for the celibacy, was that celibacy, marriage, was the lowest form of friendship. The higher form of friendship would be no strings attached. So you make a commitment to somebody when you marry them, but when you're best friends with somebody, there's no strings attached. There's nothing that says that you can't walk away anytime, and if you are so close friends with them, then that's the ultimate. The next level up would be to be best friends with God, and God lives in heaven. So they were trying to create heaven on earth to show God that they were worthy of being his friend. There's no dust in heaven. And this is where all the cleaning came from. They had very clean houses, and they designed everything so it would be easy to clean. I don't know. But so the way they worship so Quakers don't have ministers either. You get together and you speak out spontaneously. And what happened was Mother Ann rose to be a leader in the church, and sometimes that happens. But with Shakers, the religion permeates your entire life. Whenever you're doing anything, you're doing it for the angels or for God, and you know that he's watching, and pleasing the angels was really important to them. They didn't talk about doing the best of anything because they knew only God could do the best. They did it to be good enough for the angels. Yeah, if you'd like to come up and ask questions, feel free.
Thank you so much.
But